2019. It is 4:32, and we are starting a work session of the Board of Commissioners. And can we do a roll call, please?
President Norris?
Here.
Vice President Herron?
Here.
Secretary Spikers?
Absent.
Commissioner Pollard?
Here.
Commissioner Hurt? Here, excuse me.
It's interesting we don't do a flag salute here, don't we? Do
No, not
everything
on
else.
this, no.
I know it's not on here.
Even on committees, we don't.
Yeah, just seems strange.
We'll get to
Okay. Yes, it is. Due diligence summary updates.
All right. Ready to roll?
Yes, we're ready
Okay.
to roll.
All right. We'll get to that. Just the usual reminder, just to all kind of start off on the same, just getting our brains wrapped around the same thing. This is just continually more and more complex, so just keep returning to the core. So the transition, just with the lease operations agreement, so transitioning operations from Public Hospital District Green Box to then associate with the Overlake Blue Triangle. Operations will go there, and then so the hospital districts, rather than receiving dollars from operations, now will receive inflow from lease, in addition to tax dollars that come in. Realigning is there. Just reminding again the why affiliate. I mean, we share this with our ops team as well, just to kind of remember, because we all kind of regularly keep getting asked, from as we engage with people, we want to remind why we affiliate. So the long-term viability for health services in the community, which is really probably our number one. The brand presence by linking on to someone who already has established brand presence, and then the opportunities to grow our services and strengthen the clinical integration between the two organizations. And then increasing our community outreach and the opportunity to expand local community health educations, which I know you all have really talked about opportunities around the population health model, that it would now open up those opportunities there. And then we added in what was introduced at the last work study, which I thought was a good reminder, as we keep coming back to it, what will the board's role be after transaction is done. So Steve introduced those to us as we were looking through the post-affiliation budget around a role of landlord. So all of the stewardship roles that come along with that, and then influencing the population health of the district, again, really ties in with that fourth item in the reasons for affiliating. And then the tax and investment income oversight, definitely a fiduciary responsibility through the RCW, but then that investment income as well, because there'll be now two large trust accounts, one that is a trust account for the revenue bonds that we currently have, and then the new trust account that will be part of the affiliation. Both of those will have investment income coming into them, so there'll need to be oversight around that, and then to manage the debt, which we're already very well attuned to. Then just jumping in tonight to start working through our topic areas. So the due diligence reviews, we've got a couple of things going on there. So one is we are in the process right now of doing some face-to-face meetings for some select departments. And the reason behind that is we've delivered a fair amount of information to Overlake already through the due diligence process. But there's some information that we really just can't relay to them through pieces of paper. They're just things that they need to explore, and so we're setting those up in-person experiences. So what they've done is ask their management, so maybe a department manager, that has said to them, please go and help have a better insight into what are some of the opportunities that will be presented through the course of affiliation, what are some of the risks or some of the concerns. They're incredibly reasonable questions to ask. We're walking into them kind of asking the same thing. We're focusing probably more on the opportunities. What is there for us to have ideas that we'll be able to gain from from the affiliation. But that it is not, I mean, we've told everyone it is not a time to be talking about how do you actually accomplish an integration. It's far too premature for that, and so it's not the time or time to be spent on. So we've had 2 meetings so far. They both went incredibly well. Great relationship building. One of the things we didn't know was how they would walk in the door. Just how do you position yourself to be function, in a very large organization, a tertiary care facility? Just how do you put your brain to walk into a smaller facility and really understand those different dynamics? And for both groups, I'm looking because you guys have been in both of the groups. I think both of them have really done an exceptional job of walking in the door and setting, having right expectations. And in fact, I think they had right expectations, and we wowed them. On top of that, I mean, when you talk to them, they didn't have low expectations. They just had right-sized ones. But then we even wowed them. Mm-hmm. So and that's part of the goal. Having fun. Anything you guys want to add with the due diligence experiences? At 2 of 6.
2 of 6.
Mine's tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Mine's tomorrow.
Right.
They moved it.
Right.
Oh, so what do you do? Do you have meetings individually?
The department.
Oh, the
department that I will have is
okay.
tomorrow.
I see. Okay.
Every meeting that occurs, there is
There's
at
different.
least one executive member there for the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yes. They aren't occurring outside of our eyes and ears. Most because you want to just stay on
Just
track.
focus on, yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah, so all really good stuff. Then the clean room documents, if you remember, the clean room documents are things that either one or the 2 sets of attorneys have identified as information that has valuable business-oriented information and that really just can't be allowed to come outside of a protected space because it may have impact on just on business and disclose strategy that is either strategy or plans that's otherwise intended to be kept constrained or for only specific people to see. Mm-hmm. And so there's a collection of information that we need to look at, and so we will be going and doing that on the 27th. Mm-hmm. So we'll be going and doing that review. So we'll actually go on site to Overlake, and they'll have all the documents prepared for us, and we'll look through them. So following that,
so is that how much of our executive staff is going to go? You
Steve and I.
Okay.
No legal counsel present, or just?
There's no negotiation.
We're not negotiating.
There's no legal issues.
Just looking at how
Just looking at how things are, yeah.
Absorbing information.
Okay.
So the timing's great because it's just in a week prior to the next version of this meeting. So the September version of this meeting. And so it'll position us to come and bring the entire summary of what we've learned as we've gone through all of the document reviews. We introduced that to you last month of what that summary looks like. And then, so we got the first round of it done. We'll bring it back and it'll be in total because it will all be finished at that point in time. So, any questions about that? Commissioner Pollard, you look like you were getting ready to say something, but no, you're just repositioning.
I'll let you know.
Okay.
Okay.
So on the definitive agreement, so that's our next topic that we always cover. We had hoped that we would have the first version of the definitive agreement, but one of the key stakeholders is on vacation. A couple weeks prior, another key stakeholder was on vacation. This is on the Overlake side, and now another key stakeholder, and so they need to be respected and to flow through them before it comes to us. So we're hopeful that once they get back from vacation, they're back on Monday. They'll be able to look at it, and then hopefully we'll see it coming to us late next week or early the following. We'd love to get get our hands on it and start looking through it. We have all kinds of notes to make sure definitive agreements that are represented in that. In that regard, there are a couple items that I was hoping we would kind of be able to go ahead and just bring to a circular closure tonight. And so one of those was the issue that was brought up around the RCWs. And I think, Commissioner Pollard, you were the one who brought it to our attention. So it's been through a lot of different review processes. Oscar Ray has looked at it, and as well as his staff. Skip's been involved. Brian's been involved. And several overlay attorneys as well. So it's been nice to really get everybody's consensus opinion together. And so I included in the emails I sent out to you earlier this week, I included the summary. And the summary, it was actually written by the overlay attorney, but he just did such a nice job of kind of putting all the thought processes together. So I'm not sure we need to actually read through the whole response, but if anybody wants to talk through it, then let's do that. But I'll summarize it, and then that'll open the door. So our question was, does the RCW say that there has to be representation on a board that is created as part of an affiliation, as a part of a coming together? That's where the question that was launched out there.
Are we talking about the summary of this or the letter from O'Brien?
About the letter. Yeah.
And who is Dawn? D-O-N.
Dawn is the attorney for overlay.
Oh, okay.
What's his last name?
Black.
Attorney Dawn Black on the overlay.
Right. You did a nice job. So the summary is that because the agreement that we're putting together is a lease operating agreement,
right,
we actually are not coming together to do anything. I mean, what we're doing a trade-off, a handoff, or an engagement to do something on behalf of the other, but we're not coming together. And it's because even though there is a new entity being formed, that new entity is being formed by Overlake to function on Overlake's behalf. The two of us together aren't contributing to it, and so there is not an obligation to serve on a board there. That being said, the idea that we talked about last month, which was looking at what they did at Swedish Edmunds, which was putting together a committee, a strategic collaboration committee that looked out for the interests of both sides. It just became a great forum, and they continue to operate that strategic collaboration committee. Swedish Edmunds does. They continue to operate it on a quarterly basis because it represents the forum where they come together to accomplish the chartering, the reasons that the committee was chartered. And it's about representing the responsibilities and the obligations and the interests of each party.
Is it the model, the same one? Is it a lease purchase model as well?
It is. It is the one we're watching.
Yeah, because Evergreen is different, right?
Yes.
And Monroe, because they have a different model of
Correct.
board of commissioners in between.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, just want to make sure it is the same.
You're
That
absolutely
we're
correct.
looking at
the one
the
that
same.
is the one that is just almost identical, if not identical, to
Okay.
what we're contemplating is the Swedish Edmunds model.
Swedish Edmunds model.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which was the old Stevens Hospital.
What did you mean?
Well, when they went to affiliation and merge with Evergreen Monroe, their model was that they have 2 and 2 on each, and then there's a
one in the middle.
A one in the middle. So they're on both sides. But that was a different type of negotiations or level.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to clarify that. How does that work? How does it apply to us? So,
Super question.
okay.
Because it is one that's near us.
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
And it's a public hospital district with another.
With another.
It was flipped. The public
Yeah.
hospital district is the one doing the acquisition.
Yeah.
'Cause,
Yeah.
Yeah, Monroe is.
That's
But
right. Okay.
when we actually have spoken with them, we've
Yeah.
sat down and spoken with Evergreen Monroe
Right.
and with
Evergreen, Kirkland.
Kirkland about that, and they pretty uniformly say, wow, wish we would have done it differently. Not every single one of them, but they have found there to be some just some challenges. It's got a cumbersomeness to it because of so many different boards, 3 different boards.
Yeah.
I'd like the record to show that Commissioner Spikers has arrived.
Sorry, everyone. I had to go down to the jail.
Oh, no.
That's what attorneys do. We're going to get around. All right, do you need to add more?
So in this email, you'll see that so overly, they're willing to talk about the committee. They were a little thrown. They didn't expect that, but they're willing to talk. They're willing to talk about it, and so it'll be approached in the definitive agreement. So more to come.
Yeah, I understand. That's okay.
Any open questions or thoughts about that? I just wanted to not fail to finish it up.
Well, it looks like we may get more.
Where are we at in the agreement so far?
We're not at the agreement yet. We are in
the letter.
Okay.
The letter.
I don't have.
Right there.
Oh, here it is.
On that, you had 70.44240 and 260. This has all the 260. I don't see 240 here.
So
What
there's
was
a
that?
couple of places in here where he quotes
Yeah,
240, but
240. No, that's 260, which is up there, but the 240 is not coded.
Here's,
No.
he doesn't.
Okay.
They also have
We'd already addressed that.
The 240. Okay.
he has 44.315
It's
too.
all 260 that okay, that's fine. It's okay. We can move on.
Go home and pull them up.
I'm just curious. We'll pull it up.
You want a copy?
The 240, the 260, and the 315 were all conversations that have come up over the course of time. So this is just an intention to say I'm hoping that we can kind of wrap all of this up. Everybody feel like it's wrapped up so that we don't feel like there's things hanging out there.
Yeah, I just had one question for Skip, if you have a minute. So, based on your knowledge of the hospital districts and some knowledge of affiliations, what's not, is there really a possibility, and is it reality, that a hospital who is agreeing to allow another hospital district or a hospital to take over operations remain in any sort of control other than the agreement? In other words, to have actual board members that would be on the new entity's board.
There's none that I'm aware of, and there's no requirement that specifically requires that. Every research, every person, every attorney, every organization I've checked with doesn't occur that way. But you can have advisory committees, operating committees, some other form of input into that operating organization, the entity that's actually operating it. But I don't know of any others. In fact, I can tell you there are no others.
Yeah,
Not only do I not know, I've looked everywhere and asked.
I also did.
Did you find anything, David?
No.
But, if you read the concluding paragraph from Don Black, he's an outside counsel. He's with Ogden Murphy, a very large, a very, very reputable, long-standing law firm that is very, very competent and familiar in these kind of areas. In his concluding paragraph, that being said, Overlake was willing to entertain discussion about possibility of some form of limited advisory committee that would potentially serve the same or similar purpose to the stewardship reports that are in the LOI. So remember, in the LOI already have in place stewardship reports that are going to be coming forward. This would help supplement that, not supplant it. It would still occur, but it would supplement that. So I think it's a really good compromise from what I've seen. And as Dr. Whitcop and I have discussed, there's some other models like that that are working well.
So is the public then precluded from being at any of the board meetings that they would have this new entity?
It's a private entity. They are not under the laws of the state of Washington pertaining to the Public Meetings Act. So they could close their meetings. I suspect they have what are called rules of procedure, and they probably say you can close it for this and this and this, or they close them all, or they close them none. But they're not bound by any other requirements.
They're not obligated at all, huh?
You would still continue to be bound, of course, but they are not bound by that.
So how, I guess my concern, and that piggybacks on what you're saying, is how do we communicate to the community what's going on, and so that they, I mean, it's their money.
Sure. Well, I'm sure they're going to have ways to communicate, but they'll communicate with you, and I'm sure that you can either work through here or definitive agreements. Your expectations in terms of what information you need, when you need it, how do you need it, when you want it, how can they assist and help communicating. The few meetings that I sat in early on, they have something that you've never really had, and that's a PR department. I don't know if that's the correct name for it, but they're really good.
Public relations.
They have that, and the individuals that were in the meetings, I was quite impressed. They were asking all the right questions and thinking about how to strategize that. So I think you'll be much better off because you'll have that capacity through them that's never really been available to this hospital. As far as I know, you don't have the resources to have a staff, a whole branch or department that deals with public relations.
Tried it a couple times. It didn't work so well.
Yeah, I think that's pretty typical for rural public hospitals.
Yeah, I think they
Not
did.
uncommon.
Well, here's something to simplify the advisory need, something that they might think about, and would give us a little bit more control over things, but not necessarily, just at least control over giving them information and obtaining information.
Sure.
What about quarterly allow a liaison from the board to be at a board meeting of their choice, so it's not one that would be with a lot of information they don't want to give out to the general public, but one that maybe is one for show for us to give us information about what they're doing so we can communicate back.
Communicate to the community.
So we don't need to have an advisory committee, that we could alternate as liaisons to go to a quarterly meeting or something like
It's a
that.
more appropriate question actually for Dr. Whitcock, because she understands and knows these players much better than I do. I think they're open and receptive to trying to meet that need. What is that need? It's communication. You want to be able to know what they're doing so you can communicate it on. So Dr. Whitcock might want to answer that. I can tell you, representing other large corporations and organizations, when you're a privately held organization, you don't really want to create all these exceptions where you can come to our meeting and this and that. You want to say, look, we'll come to you with information, or you tell us what you need when you want it, rather than creating almost an ex officio or liaison type person.
Which may not necessarily always get information
it
accurate
just
either.
It just doesn't align real well, my experience. I've worked both in the public sector for many, many years and the private sector, and sometimes it's hard to mesh those two. So it's easier to let the private sector figure out what they want to do. The public sector come along and create that public-private, relationship, arrangement. But have the public sector say, this is really what we need, and the private sector can get it to you. But don't force yourself into the boardroom, so to speak, if I'm being blunt.
I just thought they could use it as a PR device to allow information to flow back to the public, to give the public more of an idea of what they're doing as far as, for the community, what types
I
of...
think they'll find wonderful ways to keep that communication flow occurring on a regular basis because it's part of their marketing campaign. But they are, even in the LOI, there is an agreement. They completely understand the need for information, and they are definitely willing to work on constructing a reporting so that it keeps you all informed of what they're doing, that they're in compliance with everything in the definitive agreement. That's a strategic plan. And so it really one of the things that we will do in an upcoming work study is try to delineate what would we like to see in that report. Because, and that's where I think the concept of a strategic alliance committee, or whatever word we put on it, becomes a great opportunity to sit around the table and talk through that report, so that it's not just a report getting delivered, but it has a conversation around it, and that's where that committee is a great forum for that. And now, probably the couple of board members that are there can bring the information back and talk to everybody else on the board. So it becomes one of your board committees.
So, Trish, that's probably a better answer than I provided, but I think, Dr. Wyckoff just got a sense of what they are. I can tell you that the times I've met with them, including their CEO, Mike Marshall, who used to be in the Olympia area, and I'm not real good at names, but he recognized me immediately, come over. And he's a gentleman that is dedicated, I think, to being transparent and being communicative, and that's just my impression. Attorneys, you get to the point where you can read people to some degree. That's my read on him, and with Dr. Wyckoff, working this issue, I think it's a communication issue.
Yeah, it's going to be vitally important that the public knows what we've done and how it would benefit them and the community.
Especially how it would benefit them because they're spending their money.
Right. Well,
They want to
they're
make
not
sure we're.
spending our, they're not
No,
spending.
our money,
Yeah.
as a citizen, you want to know that your money is going somewhere. Where's it going and what are we going to get from it? I mean, if you're getting taxed, you want to know.
But then the question is you're just going to be able to define what you need from overlay.
That's right.
I think they'll be able to provide it in more than you want.
You saw when Mike, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, rather than ad hoc requests, though, I love the word alliance that you used. Can we explicitly ask for a community alliance committee to meet regularly, blah, 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 and just get that on paper so that we can point to it and say, let's get this running now, guys.
That'll be part of the definitive agreement. It'll have a place in there.
Okay.
So that'll be the opportunity to charter it right in there.
Yeah.
Here's its intention. Here's who sits on it. Here's how often it meets. And here's the information that at a minimum gets exchanged. And that'll be the conversation that we need to come back and have is what do we put in that minimum information that we want exchanged. Phone removed next time.
I'm going to seize her phone now.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. I think there's many ways to approach this that can be done, I think, to satisfy what we need to have.
Agreed.
So, sounds good.
Any one of you going into their board meeting, it won't happen. I'm just really honest, frankly, it will not. Nobody gets to go in there unless you're
just a thought.
called.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you get called, I think you actually are scared.
Unless you're
By
invited.
invitation only.
By
Right.
invitation only.
But but even if you did get in, you're only going to get a pie slice of information that you didn't get to control at all. Whereas something that's in the agreement, there'll be some control that we have over saying what's the minimum information that we want to see. Yeah, so this will be the thing that we'll want to come back to. Okay. Can we jump into the trust now? That's going to take up.
Yeah. Trust, yes.
We're going to take up the majority of our time. So this is the one that's titled Trust Agreement. And what this is a coming together. So Skip and David, I hope you weren't offended at my
Not at
note
all.
that said it doesn't have the legalese yet.
No.
So this is the content that was when we talked about trust in June, furiously taking notes of everything that was said. And so this is grabbing all of that information, that's grabbing the information that was in the LOI, and then it's also incorporating the information that's come through as the executive team and Keith have participated in offering some other information. So remember Keith Clevin from Piper Jaffray. So he's been really helpful in making sure to protect all of our revenue bond interests there. So this represents the draft of the content that will then go into the definitive, or not the definitive agreement, excuse me, the trust agreement.
Who wrote this?
Brian Howard.
That's our lawyer.
Why do you ask? Is there something on it that was bothering?
I just didn't see a name on it.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, it's internally produced through Brian. So I was kind of thinking the best way to go through this, and I think it's probably best to go through section by section. So the section number 1 is talking about the creation of the trust account, funded by a portion of the tax revenue in excess of money that's already obligated, and a portion of the unrestricted cash balance. And the two purposes of the trust account, there are only two purposes, and one is a safety net for some very specific operational losses, and we'll talk about those more in other sections, and to maintain investments, and we've referred to it as a safety net, so that should we have to resume operations of the hospital, there's money in order to do that transition back, or that transition back to us. So in the 1.1.1, it says that the total amount that the trust fund will need to be will be that amount necessary to recruit staff and employees and then other things for startup operations, and that for 6 months. Because anything, if we restart a business, that's how long it's going to take before you have consistent cash flow coming in. So that our conversation tonight is not going to be about the amount of the trust fund. We will get to that when we gather for our next work study, but just sticking with the content. And this term of the agreement only goes through 2025.
So,
Yeah.
if I recall, last time we met, we were talking about these 6 months, and the first month was like a negative, or it was a loss. And then the last month was like we were in the black by $1 million or something. And
Are you talking about the 6 years?
Yeah, 6 years. And so I'm wondering, this 6 month period of time when we're going to have our accounts receivable, right?
That's not determined. That's part of the definitive agreement we have to work through.
Okay, so if they had that, it would seem like we wouldn't have to put any money.
And if they have that, it's because they've purchased it from us.
So they know what the cost
At
is.
the beginning of the term, is that where you're talking about, as we
Yeah, at the
transition
beginning of the
operations
first
to them?
year, yeah.
Yeah, they
So-
would purchase, one of the ideas is they would purchase the accounts receivable from us at a discount, because you're not going to collect it all. But that's extra cash that we just got.
So, could that become part of the 6 months that they need to have money, or what? I mean, it seems like they have most of the money, and we have very little compared to them. And why would we need to fund them more than?
We aren't. The 6 months, are you talking about the 6 months that's referenced in 1.1.1?
To fund operations for 6 months?
That's if it returns to us.
Oh, okay.
Those 6
Got
months.
it.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Thanks for clarifying.
Fund up to
It's
start
the
up.
6 months, when it comes back to us, that the starting everything up again.
Okay. Which we've already discussed, that they can't do it.
But whatever it is, if they can't do it and we're coming back to something new, whatever the new is still going to be a 6 month ramp up. So somebody will need to fund it.
Just comment, David. We're going to take what we talked about last time and then work on what is the number look like. So we don't have a specific number, but we'll have we come together next month and have that an estimate. Yeah. And what the costs, we get our arms around what the costs of next steps are, if there's a dissolution.
Yeah. The other thing is when you lay out the 6 years and what it costs per year. I know we're off on a different topic. This is not the different trust account, but is there a possibility that is that the bare bones or just conservative estimate? Because can we reduce costs?
Good.
That's pretty bare
Don't,
bones.
That budget was
thing to ask
presented
me
as
to
very bare
answer
bones.
in 2 minutes, so, well,
It is.
But that's
All
definitely
right.
something.
Get back to the trust account.
Thank you. So if I pause for section number 1, is there anything that you guys saw as you read through it that needed clarification, that you didn't like the way it read, or you felt like it was conflicting with some of the ideas that we've expressed before?
in the very beginning of section 1 where it says that it'll be funded by a portion of the tax revenue in excess, et cetera. I feel like we are expecting now any extra money is going to go to fund the trust, but it's also going to go to fund any of this public health outreach that we're talking about. And by the way, there's none of it until year number 4.
Right.
So am I misunderstanding where the money's going to come from, or are we just saying that and actually it's really going to come from the unrestricted cash balance?
I think that's the reason why it says funded by a portion and funded by a portion, because we don't know enough yet to understand what is the amount, but to recognize that it needs to be a portion. If we have a significant amount of excess from the taxes, overly, really doesn't have insight into truly how much there is or how little there is. So when this first came out in the LOI, because this is LOI language, that they wanted to make sure that if there was an abundance, that part of that went into the trust. It'll be a small portion.
In that same paragraph, what are we speaking about when we say maintenance? That second line, first bullet, what do we mean by maintenance there?
The expenses that the district will be incurring for maintaining their assets, like there will be some landlord obligations for this facility and this land, and definitely for East Campus. So those were the maintenance expenses in the.
You got to put an extra $20,000 a year just because.
For the
Especially
the
East
unforeseen
Campus.
whatever.
Campus,
Yeah, very, very true. Okay, we can always come back to this. So, section number 2. Section number 2 says there is an eligibility before that must be met before you can ever talk about accessing the funds. So, and if you've read already, it's not only, it's an eligibility, and then you can only access it for certain reasons. So the eligibility says that you have to be meeting quality thresholds and standards, as well as operational standards. And so those standards will be those things that we figure out what goes in the reporting that we want to have.
So it will be spelled out.
Yes, and so
Need to be spelled out,
October
that's-
1st of
yeah.
every year,
Kind of vague.
there will be operational and quality standards that are constructed that need to be met in order for to even be eligible to access funds.
So we will know by October 1st what that is this year, for this year.
For the year, for the October 1st before the year that it takes effect. So it won't be October of this year, it'll be October of 2020. And it's because it won't take effect, Commissioner Pollard, the whole transition won't take effect until the end of 2020 because we have to go through the certificate of need process.
So this mutually acceptable quality thresholds and standards will come from us to be accepted by them, or how's that gonna?
Yes.
Okay.
Mutual, we both agree.
Mutually, yeah.
We both agree. The intention here is that we initiate.
You initiate that.
We initiate, but they will agree that it's not unreasonable.
Okay.
And we just talked about 2.1 and 2.3. 2.2 in the middle. Again, that's out of the LOI, in that we said that the first year of operations, we didn't want any changes. We didn't want them taking away any of the services that are currently being provided. And so they have to abide by that section of the LOI.
Let me just be clear.
Yes.
Are all the clinics that we have right now on the bridge, are they taking over that operation as well?
Yes, it is. Everything that we do right now is all together. So it's all part of the same agreement, transaction.
Okay.
So it's the hospital clinic,
That's the clinic,
bridge
on the
clinic,
bridge clinic.
hospital operations,
Right.
as well as the
CAT
business,
scans.
the business operations in East Campus.
Okay. Because I thought at one time it was separate, that we keep the clinical component and then only the clinical services within the hospital. And that wasn't part of, okay.
Um,
I just wanted to
What
be clear.
you may be remembering was quite a while ago, we talked about that as a concern.
Right.
We talked about that as a concern of somebody might come along and want to split them up, and we had a conversation about the pros and cons of that. And the outcome of that conversation was we really, our asset
Consolidate
is
everyone.
richer altogether.
Oh, okay.
But that may be what you're remembering is that
Yeah, a while
conversation
back.
that we
Yeah,
had.
yeah. Okay.
The only exception would be
Because I
the
thought,
King County Rescue lease. They're not going to assume that. They're not going to have that management of that.
that would be the.
No,
That's
just the
right.
business
Just that, yeah.
It's
operations
the
on
business
this
operation
campus.
over there, not the lease that you hold.
So we would hold the lease, so they would,
We know it.
Yeah, anything over on East Campus other than the business operations, but anything that's happening on East Campus remains with the district.
Correct.
Yeah, East Campus
Yeah,
is
that's why
not part
I
of
want to
it.
make sure that that is the case.
Yes, East Campus is not part of it, but the
Not part.
business operations that are happening right now on
So
East
the
Campus are. So the
rescue
billing
and
no,
billing?
not rescue.
not rescue, but billing.
Our business operations that are happening on East Campus is human resources, our billing office is there, and our medical staff services is there. That is part of our operations. That's part of the deal.
Okay, let's just say the board wants to, this is hypothetical.
Sure.
We want to start a business at that site, at the East Campus, maybe an academy, a training or something. Is that something that is going to be the Board of Commissioners' responsibility, not yours? Not the hospital, I don't mean.
Not
I don't mean not overlay. I don't. You know, let's say, okay, in the future, I'm just looking
Yes.
at over the future, because that's still a stronghold for the board, the district, for the Board of Commissioners.
You are exactly
You
right.
follow what I'm saying?
Exactly
Yeah.
right.
So what
Anything-
happens with this business operations that is like, separate and
So,
apart
great,
from?
Great question.
Yes, that's why I want
So
to make sure that.
we right now currently are using that space for business operations because we don't have any place here to put
Yes.
them. So when all of this transaction occurs, Overlake will have to decide, do they pay you rent? That would be yet another
That's
lease.
what I wanted to, yes.
That they're
Okay.
going to pay you rent to keep
Yeah.
the operations over there. Do they do something different? Do they rent a different space to put it in? That sounds
I want to
crazy.
make
But
sure it's there.
yeah, and you're right, it has to be very well spelled
Yes,
out.
yes.
But you asked the question, can the commissioners, the board decide to start some different
Yeah.
business over there? Absolutely, because it's your property
Maybe like
and your money.
medical offices for the doctors that are here, yeah.
Yeah. So if
I'm not
if at that point in time there's a
long-term.
lease agreement, then obviously you've got a lease agreement you have to abide by.
Okay, so that would be included
As long as
when we decide to, okay, thanks.
it's a great question.
I don't remember zoning.
What's that?
The zoning there too, is it?
Yeah,
Different
but
than
in the
zoning
future,
here.
we're just
Yeah.
talking about. well,
Right.
that's-
Yeah. That's,
Once
this is city
everything
and
has
that's
been,
not city.
yeah, satisfied, once everything has been clear.
Right. On the next page continues the requirements that have to be met in order for eligibility to access the trust funds to occur. So the market assessment is a requirement that's within the LOI. So that has to be have been completed, and then fully maintain the facilities and the equipment. So being good stewards of the things that they're leasing from us. But a caveat that trust funds, they're not intended for routine maintenance or upkeep of the facilities. That has to come from operations. It's not what the trust fund is for. We'll get to what the trust fund can be for. Along with that is making sure that the facility remains in compliance with survey accreditation and other standards. That's the end.
Question.
So, yes.
On the word market assessments,
Yes.
we're not talking there about the community health needs assessment, are we?
A community health needs assessment could be a market assessment. The LOI just says that we want them to make changes that reflect the needs of the community.
Okay, who is going to be in charge of and pay for the community health needs assessment?
The community health needs assessment will be done by this body at the end of this year, because this is the year that it has to be done.
December.
Because this trust won't go into effect until after this year. This market assessment is not about the community health needs assessment so much as it is the market.
Where you go for your
Make
healthcare.
sure you bring things in that this market needs.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of overlap there, but the community health needs assessment also addresses things like food, shelter, other resources, as
Income.
opposed to market things that you would supply in a hospital.
And it says here, ensure that Snoqualmie Valley Hospital and facilities remain in compliance with all applicable survey, certification, and accreditation requirements and standards. That would seem to rope in the community health needs assessment. And if we are really trying to do this in 2019 because of the time frame, it really should have been started already.
We're fine.
But this pertains only
This
to
isn't about the
facilities.
community
Yeah.
health needs assessment.
Mr. Paul, this
What?
ensure that the facilities remain in compliance with the applicable survey certification. And that community needs assessment would not address.
You're right.
these
It's a-
It's the facilities. But I am concerned that, about the community health needs assessment, and I'd like to see that we get started on that.
So the LOI, just to let you know, says that overlay will conduct market assessments and they'll develop action plans according to the findings of those assessments. So they've committed to that in the LOI, and that'll
Well,
carry through.
I don't think market assessments are necessarily the community health needs assessment.
No, I don't.
They're not. They're not intended to. They're not intended to be the same.
There's overlap, though.
Well, I know that you cited it, so
Well, I'm just telling you what's in the LOI.
I understand that. That's why I asked about clarification on what we mean by market assessments, and it does not include the community health needs
No,
assessment.
the community health needs assessment could inform it, but it's really an intention that it's a market assessment.
Right.
They only put in what's really needed
Okay, thank you.
and put in what is needed.
Under 2.61, I was wondering why we couldn't put in compliance with building codes and regulatory codes, kind of an all-encompassing, just to make sure
Sure.
we know. It seems we could, at a big expense, if something happened, that we have to change.
It becomes our responsibility instead of theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the other word would be tenant, tenant physical improvement or something. That way it would be the responsibility, anything that happens within the facility. I think that, I don't know, that's how I was interpreting as well.
Sure.
Because we don't, so that it's not our responsibility, something happens within the walls of the hospital.
That's right.
It's more,
That, and I think in that, so that will be dealt with in the agreement, not the trust
Right,
agreement,
okay.
but in the
definitive,
agreement, the definitive agreement.
okay,
Yeah.
just wanted to bring it up
But you're
again.
right, that's a definitely on
Because
everybody's
we don't want to
mind
have
for
to absorb all that stuff in,
clarity around
Yes,
whose responsibility is.
yeah.
On the first bullet, it looks like we're putting ourselves in a good position to appeal or challenge a federal government ruling that would terminate our critical access hospital status.
Where are you speaking
Can
about?
I have you?
What number, what section?
The second, or the first bullet down at the bottom of the page.
What page?
OMC.
OMC,
There's a
number,
number
Pages
in
are not
that.
numbered, so it makes it.
Section
There's a
3?
no, each section is numbered.
Is it section 3?
You have numbers
Oh,
on
it's the one you were speaking to, David, 2.1 to 2.6.
2.61, 2.6.1.
2.1 to 2.61?
2.6.
Yeah.
I don't have .1.
He doesn't have a number.
I don't think you
Oh,
have
yours
a
does
separate
not?
Commissioner
Oh.
Paul.
There's some reason you have printed out.
Oh, that's
without
a different one.
numbers, just bullets.
Here you go.
Yeah,
Here's
you,
the
that's
number one.
better.
Okay, well, I printed out the one that was sent to me by.
Yeah.
Your printer might have deleted those.
No, I printed it.
That's why I requested a copy from
No
Dr.
problem.
Whitcup, because I
No
can't.
problem,
yeah.
that'll help you, yeah. Sorry about that, I'm glad you spoke up.
It looks like the second page, the pages are not numbered.
Yeah, this one.
So is
Just do
it
the number.
3.61?
But we do have section.
He's talking
Yeah.
2.5 line.
No, 2.6.1.
It says all requirements.
Oh, 2.6 when it's been
Could you
implied.
restate what you were concerned about?
I think if you look at 3.1.1, Commissioner Pollard, it's on page 2,
We aren't
the
quite there
Snoqualmie
yet.
Valley's hospital loss of critical access hospital staff certification.
All right, where are you?
And this is
Yeah.
3.1.1.
We aren't quite there yet, but
Yeah, we're still on 2.6.1.
We double-sided, you have to flip this one.
Oh, okay, that's what I see what you mean. Mine is printed one side. That's good.
I think your question, we're not right there yet, but it's 3.1.1 about the critical access hospital.
Yeah.
That was it.
if everybody's
Yeah,
okay that we're done with two before we jump to
3.1.1,
three.
but we're not there yet.
But we're almost ready. If everybody will just say
Yeah, we
okay
can
to
move
leave
on.
2, then we can jump into 3.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
three, the grouping of 3 represents, so first you have to be eligible, and then 3 represents the reasons why.
Mhm.
So the reasons why you can access the trust fund. And so it all has to do with things that are really outside of the control of Overlake. So the loss of critical access
Yeah.
hospital, the loss of the subcomponent of critical access, which is swing bed status. If there's any material change to the
Yeah.
reimbursement program or the reimbursement methodology, that's 3.1 to 3.4.
Yeah.
We also put in here that if the district fails to pay its bond obligations, that actually is going to have, could have public, very negative implications to Overlake's business, and that's another thing that's outside their control.
Yeah.
And so we felt it was appropriate to put that there. But that's what this group represents, and so please,
Yeah.
now thoughts about this.
Well, I just want to point out that the loss of critical access hospital certification status, et cetera, indeed, that's outside the control of Overlake. It's also outside our control.
Especially
As a matter
if
of fact,
population
Especially
grows.
operating.
As a matter of fact, the Inspector General for the Department of Health and Human Services has on its checklist, its to-do list, to implement its earlier proposal to remove critical access hospital status from hospitals that are within 10 miles of another hospital. And that's on their to-do list. All I'm saying is, it's beyond Overlake's control, it's also beyond our control.
So maybe the word be in the event of whatever, because we don't have any control both sides. If we do lose that, if, like you said, if we go, there's a limitation on the number of critical access beds.
Yeah, and then I'm sorry, I was premature, and then you jump down, and it says they may use trust funds to appeal.
Cover the cost of
government
appealing, yeah.
rulings, and that concerns me,
Yeah, I see.
because that could be a money pit. If you're getting into suing the federal government, as well as third-party payer action, it says, they may claim that we did something that
Yeah, and if it's
caused
not,
us to lose
so,
our
yeah,
critical
it's not
access.
our costs.
So we are not there yet, but
Okay.
but it's okay. No, we'll talk about it, and then when we get there, we can talk about it again. That's the why in a bit. There's a section that talks about the amount that can be accessed at any time or for each time or each reason for dipping in, and the access has to be approved, has to have a bilateral approval. So this body would
Is that
also
part of this
need
document?
Yeah, it's a few
All right,
pages.
so I'll wait for that.
Yeah, it's a few pages down, but
Thank you.
it's because of exactly what you're bringing up that got put in there. 3.2, still continuing to talk about they may access trust funds for operational losses, that they can use it for appealing. So we were just talking about that. And then 3.3, though, talks about that if they opt to
terminate the agreement at any point in time, if Overlake opts to terminate the agreement, then they have waived the access to the trust fund.
Let me go back up
Yeah.
to 3.2.
Yeah.
It's a feeling governmental, I get that, or third-party payer action, meaning any kind of creditor type of issue, or
You're doing 3.2?
Yeah,
If,
back to
oh, I see.
3.2.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Payer, party payer.
Who would be a third-party payer?
could be some other
Usually, yeah, just other
service
entity.
that is.
Other entity.
So let's just say they sell something, or let's just say, I mean, give me a third-party service that we potentially could use.
Primera is a third-party
Any
service, a
insurance.
third-party
Okay.
payer.
Any
payer.
Yeah, so any
So-
insurance company, TRICARE.
Yeah, they go out of business and say, we're not paying any of these debts.
But that third-party payer is only rises to an issue if whatever they're about threatens critical access status. So now I can't even come up with an example for you.
I just don't want us to be wasting money on legal fees dealing with third-party
Yeah.
issues.
So are you proposing just taking the or third-party payer out?
Yeah, I mean, unless it's really,
Let's,
I mean, it's so unclear to me
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it could expand that potential. If you want to, have some very specific examples about third party, like when an insurance,
Yeah.
goes out of business or something
Yeah.
like that, then
Mhm.
Or reorganizes and changes their plans and a few other things.
I don't know.
We
Skip,
fight
what do you
truck-
think?
Is,
Might
um,
take too
No,
far?
I don't think so. There's just the possibility, we can defer to Brian, who's put these together before,
Yeah.
yes, Brian Bauer.
Yeah, I've got
It
those.
all rendered. I just think there could be a third-party payer that has such a substantial debt owed to the hospital operations overlay that you would want to engage in legal action to recover that substantially. You obviously wouldn't chase,
Right.
pennies with dollars, but if there's a huge amount out there, like $1 million, or you might go after it. We don't know
Yeah, yeah.
what's
That's a
going to
bad
happen in this next evolution of
Right.
healthcare in terms of how
Yes.
payors.
No kidding.
But there may be a whole new definition of a payor, and so I think there might be reason to somehow put some kind of language in there.
Okay.
And maybe we take out the word.
Maybe it should be defined what party payer
Yeah.
ought to be,
The cost of.
definition of that,
We'll
so we
explore
know.
some more because by adding a definition, we may actually limit it too. So,
Right.
See what Brian thinks.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah.
absolutely, I got it
Well,
on it.
oftentimes public hospital districts have to pay back money, as you know.
Yeah, we do know about that.
Okay, and so if all of a sudden Overlake says, no, I don't think you have to pay that back, we're going to appeal that. That might be a third-party payor situation where the third-party payor says you're paying money back.
But it wouldn't threaten your critical access. Would Meridian be considered a third-party payer?
It'd be a governmental entity, though.
They're a governmental
A
contractor.
contractor.
It may go cover us if, on that interpretation, if it wasn't a government, it was Meridian. I'm just kind
Our
of.
fiscal intermediary.
Oh.
Okay, we'll find out more about the thinking.
I think it's a good clarification just to figure
Yep.
that out.
Yep.
We're just not able to come up with a real good example.
Okay, on 3.2.1, that's what we're discussing.
Yes,
right
it is.
now. It's interesting, it says here terminates or threatens to terminate. Now, on the next one, 3.2.2, it says terminates or reduces. It doesn't say or threatens to reduce.
Good catch.
We just want to be
Good
parallel.
catch. Yep.
Yeah.
We're threatening right now, according to Dean, so it seems like,
That point of order.
You got it, Commissioner Pollard.
that word might be one to throw out, threatens.
Yeah.
You need
Give
more.
notice to terminate, I think
Yeah, threaten is
Either
pretty
take
vague.
it out or put it in 3.2.2 to be parallel. That's all I'm suggesting.
terminates, threatens, or reduces.
Okay, got it, David.
That has to reduce.
You guys ready to go to 3.3?
I'm there.
So the affiliation agreement will permit Overlake to terminate the affiliation and the leases if any of the events that we just talked about occur. However, Overlake will have been deemed to have waived its right to terminate the affiliation and the leases if they use trust funds to cover losses resulting from 3.1 events. So they can do one or the other. They can dip into the trust funds and fight it, or they can stick it out and continue to work off their operating, but they can't take money and quit. Else on there? You guys are digesting these. 3.4, Overlake may only access and use trust funds to cover operational losses resulting from 3.1 events. Again, the things we talked about. I know these clearly. And they can, but there are still now yet another, they have to be eligible. These have to be the events, and these have to be the circumstances. So the circumstances are that the hospital has to have a loss. So they have to have an overall net loss. So even if it just didn't make as much as they wanted, but they didn't.
When you say the hospital, are you talking about us or Overlake?
Okay.
Overlake, operating the hospital operations.
It says SVH has an overall net loss. It doesn't make sense.
Versus Overlake. And see,
SVH operating Snoqualmie Valley Hospital.
Yeah.
Overlake Medical.
That's for the losses, so not Overlake entire entity, but Overlake operating this hospital.
Right.
Oh, then we need
And
to
overall.
put that in there. I think we need to put something like that in there to clarify.
An overall net loss from operations.
Well,
Fiscal years.
aren't we going to be having a net loss on the first year? Right?
You just need more
This
clarifying.
is, so in 1.1, SVH is defined as the hospital clinic, and the Ridge Clinic. That's the hospital. So it's not a reference to the district, and it's not a reference to Overlake. It's a reference to the business entity.
Of this
The
entity,
business
yes.
entity.
Okay.
The business entity that of
Okay.
SVH.
Not the hospital district.
Pardon me, but where is that defined?
1.1 on the very first page.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
So back to 3.4, the circumstances that trust funds can be pulled out is if there is a loss from operations in the fiscal year, and the events of 3.1 are considered to have contributed to the loss, and Overlake has demonstrated to the reasonable satisfaction of the district that they have tried everything. They've exhausted all options to recover those losses.
So do they operate on a federal fiscal year, October to October?
They do not. They were June to June.
Non-profit. Yeah.
June to June. And later on, it defines the fiscal year as SVH's fiscal year.
The only thing that bothers me about that is tricky accounting principles. And you can show a loss very easily.
That's what we have, it has to be certified
Yeah,
by
I
a
know.
CPA,
Yeah.
that's what we choose.
I just don't trust accounting principles.
You need to pick the CPA.
The CPA
Generally,
don't trust
accounting
legal
lawyers
principles.
either, so.
Touche.
Say you.
No,
I don't know how to go from there.
I've seen enough shell games, so.
So it is, like Steve said, there's a requirement, and again, we get to that later on, that it has to be by an auditor.
Somebody outside.
Somebody outside both organizations.
And maybe an auditor we've not used before, or the same auditors we've always used.
So the group would need to decide at that point.
Yeah.
So was a qualified CPA firm chosen jointly by the district and OMC paid for by OMC? I like that. If you put that in there.
Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah. The district and OMC as it demonstrates reasonable satisfaction of the district at all.
30,000, for 15 million.
And
Okay, I got that.
David, just, I circled net loss, and we might want to think of more definition around what that means.
Yeah.
Specificity.
Okay.
I have it underlined. That's, oh, good, okay.
Okay. At what point are we going to determine the total disbursements? I think, Steve, you addressed that earlier, didn't you?
About
The total disbursements from the fund shall not exceed.
That's the part that I said, you already started down that. I said, hold on just a minute, we'll get to it, and this is it.
Okay.
Yep, this is it.
These are the
And
caps,
so-
the ceilings, the basement, the floor. You can define that.
So we're defining that at any one time of dipping in, or any one reason for dipping in, there is a certain dollar amount or a certain percentage in any fiscal year that can be extracted. And you see blanks because
We haven't determined
feel like
that.
we felt uncomfortable putting numbers in it because we felt like we needed to first see what the amount of the trust fund needed to be, and then work our way back to these answers.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if I can go back, because we jumped ahead, we skipped one. So 3.4.1 says that to get to the trust funds, there has to be a written request as well as all the documentation required in order to access the trust funds, and there has to be an approval. So this body is part of the approval. It's bilateral.
So how would we still be meeting, if the board, would the board still be meeting, and would the board then as a collective come together and decide and vote? Is that what you're saying?
After the transaction, the board will continue to have obligations to meet consistent with the requirements of the RCWs for a public hospital district.
Okay.
So yes, that would be one of the opportunities.
I would think it would just be a legal opinion. Yes, they've met these requirements. They are now eligible from legal counsel. Right. I mean, it wouldn't be necessarily a vote.
We were constructing it that it would be by resolution, that it would allow you to have some control over the trust funds.
Even if they met all the requirements?
Well, I think the
Well,
board
yeah,
would
because
do
we've
the initial
yeah.
review of whether they've met the elements. If
Yeah.
you, for some reason, didn't think that, you could ask for a legal opinion, but the board would have the authority and ability to say, yes, we believe that, by resolution we authorize.
So the two pairings is the very last entry in 3.4 that overlay demonstrates to the reasonable satisfaction of the district that they've tried everything.
Yeah.
And then that pairs with 3.4.5, which says no properly documented request will be unreasonably denied, but still needing to have the opportunity to actually approve, because this is district property.
Yeah.
At the very end, we keep jumping around, but at the very end, it is very definitive that declares that this trust fund is the property of the district. It lives on the district's balance sheet until the end of the agreement,
Contract.
and its final owner is identified.
If we took the position of an insurance company, we could delay payments for years.
That's our honest attorney says. No,
So
maybe.
So maybe.
Well, that's one of the shell games.
So you're saying we should put in 3.4.5 will not be unreasonably withheld and will be timely delivered?
Probably. No, I don't want that.
Yeah, now, some of these are kind of self-understood, but it says here, must submit a written request and documentation
Yes, it
to
does
the
say that.
district. Just going to ask, is that documentation to the district that satisfies the district's demands, or a little documentation won't do it?
It's got to be properly documented in our own eyes.
Yeah, even the word proper documentation would help. But the written request and documentation, I think, needs to be expanded a little bit, because they could send anything and call that documentation.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
why, that's
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
why
we could
you
call
have
it
the
not
opportunity.
properly documented. There you go. That's all that means.
Again, the importance of it not being just a
Yeah,
I would leave
automatic
it
response.
expanded like that.
no, I think it needs to be done.
So what are you suggesting, Kim?
I added your words, adequate or proper documentation to support the request.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good.
And ultimately, the board will decide whether you believe it to be adequate and proper.
Yeah,
and
what
you
is,
ask for
what
more.
is added?
Ask for more information. Yeah.
3.4.3 says that the intention is that the disbursements only get made at the close of the fiscal year when you actually can demonstrate that the loss has occurred, but that there may be some circumstances that it's very clear that waiting is not fair.
And not in the best interest.
It's not in the best interest of maintaining access to health care.
Yeah.
So
But we have different fiscal years, and
This
so we
is-
say applicable.
this is applicable in
After.
3.4.4.
There you go. That's what it
It's
takes
the
over.
fiscal year of SBH after the transaction is
oh,
completed.
yeah.
So whatever, if that continues to be the calendar year that we're on right now, which it would be really hard to change.
I think it was.
But again,
But whatever it
SBH
is,
the operation,
it is
not
the
district.
operations, that's
And
correct.
so that's my question earlier, is when is the fiscal year? Do you have an SBH fiscal year, a district fiscal year, a federal fiscal year, and an overlay fiscal year?
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's why it's tied to the SBH
It
operations
would be the
fiscal year.
operation fiscal year, which would be, you said June, June.
No, that's overlays.
That's overlay.
Overlays is
January.
June.
Is it
We don't
January?
know what it will be when this, when the new entity
So,
Yeah.
takes.
and it's to be
So we
determined.
just said, whatever it is, that's what it's going to be on, just so that there isn't confusion.
Well, let's
Choose
make sure
one.
it's
Pick
the
one.
first of the year, just because bond requirements, if they take money out in the middle of the year, we may not satisfy bond requirements. If I recall, something could be.
Yeah, it would, I mean, we'd have to look into it. It would make sense to tie those.
Yeah.
Remember the first
Yeah.
year,
Yeah.
how we had the issue because we didn't think about only half a year or
Yeah.
7 months
Yeah.
worth of income,
Mm-hmm.
so.
Yeah, so it would make sense to tie it to the calendar year.
Yeah, because their bondholders are.
So I'm
Is
still,
the
I'm still a little
bond-
confused, Dr. Wick. So what is the SBH fiscal year then to be determined?
Yes,
Yet
to be determined.
That's what I got. Got it, sorry.
Yeah, it may or may not coincide with any currently existing fiscal year.
Yeah, I don't track numbers real well, that's why I became an attorney.
But aren't we being
No,
specific
you're not a
here,
good
Kim,
counter.
where we say, as used in the trust agreement, fiscal year shall mean the fiscal year of SVH?
But after OMC,
OMC has taken
So
over the
that will be the
operation of
term.
SVH.
We're being, yes, we're being specific to identify which one,
Yeah.
because there will be the current overlay fiscal year, the district's fiscal year, and there'll be a fiscal year that belongs to the operations of SBH. So that's intended to pick one. But now the conversation is coming up that there may be one of those that the bonds is tied to, and we need to be sensitive
Consistent.
to that.
Yeah.
So we'll have to look and see if the
We'll have
bond
to
is a
see,
calendar year
yeah.
or what they describe.
yeah.
So
If it's described in or prescribed, we might have to look.
Are you talking about a different fiscal year for NewCo?
yes, I am saying that NewCo, the operation of Snoqualmie Valley Hospital
Could have
after
its
the
own fiscal year?
transaction.
Yeah.
Yes,
Wow.
it could have its own, and it is not yet known. So we're not trying to declare what it's going to be, just that it is, that there is one. There will be.
Like we want mid-year, we want first year.
An
What's
Overlake
opposition?
may choose to have it tie with their
Correct.
fiscal year, because
Most
their
likely.
fiscal year is June to June, most likely. That would make sense. But the district operates on a calendar year for
Right.
the fiscal year. We needed to choose one, and so that's what this was doing. Again, now taking a pause because we may need, the bonds, we may need to be very specific about declaring if it's calendar year because of the bonds, we'll do that.
Question where it
This is where that will land. Yeah.
Steve will work on that.
Just make sure that we do provide for some fallback so that we don't end up upsetting our bond requirement.
Yes.
Covenant.
I think that's really important, David.
Which, we started that at the last work study. We talked about the need to recognize some flexibility to keep us out of that space. So,
That's
Keith
one of the
and
reasons
Steve are
we
working on
engaged
that.
Piper Jaffray.
And then 3.5 just wraps up this section that says, just a reminder, trust funds are not about operating losses that aren't a result of a 3.1 event.
So could you
operating
give us
losses-
example of ordinary operating loss?
You spent more than you made.
Mismanagement.
Business management, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That would be the ordinary variety, as opposed to something that happened outside your control about the critical access system.
Yeah.
Great. Can we go to number 4? You guys okay? So in number 4, it talks about if the operations here at the hospital generates a material profit and a positive cash flow for 2 years in a row, so 24 consecutive months, and Overlake continues to satisfy all the requirements that were in 2.1 to 2.6, so that's keeping the building up, quality measures, performance measures, then the trust fund could be accessed to expand services, essentially.
Without our approval or
Yes,
involvement?
no, with. The trust fund is never accessed without approval.
Oh, okay.
Yep,
So
At least requires,
that would require our approval.
correct.
not to be unreasonably withheld in those circumstances. That's required.
And that stays with us.
That's correct. And so the whatever is acquired, added, expanded is for the intention of remaining with the system. It now integrates in with what was handed off. It'll get handed back or continue on. Okay. And now number 5 talks about at the very end of the 6 years. So in 2025, as the end of this, the term of the first agreement is coming to an end, that at the end of 2025, Overlake cannot access any of the trust funds until it purchases, makes a decision to make a purchase, so buy out the revenue bonds.
Okay.
Would the word unless be better than until? Because they may not want to purchase.
I'm not catching the until.
Top line,
Oh.
after.
Until it purchases.
Until it purchases upon the value.
Maybe unless is better because until almost applies.
That's fine. You're always so good at making word choices.
Isn't he?
Yeah, that's great.
Probably should put in revenue.
Or unless and until. That's
Language
fine.
will be revenue.
Actually, like a lawyer, I try to get paid by the words.
Unless and
Unless or until. It's more direct.
unless or until. Unless or
Until, yeah,
Covers everything, that way.
yeah. That's exactly right. It's more like a threatening word, though.
Less. You behave yourself.
In the revenue bond documents, the bonds can be bought out as early as September in 2025. And so this says after December 31st. And just wondering if we should back it up and say September, because that's the first time that you can call the bonds, and just take away the opportunity to access the trust funds, at least in those October, November, December final stretch. It doesn't feel like a huge liability, but
Makes sense.
What are you, 5 or 6?
5.
Yeah, 5 the top
Okay.
after December 31st, 2000.
But instead of
25,
December 31st,
yeah.
it's
September.
September 1,
Yeah.
2025, because that is the first opportunity for the revenue bonds to be called.
September 1st rather than.
I would probably.
Could you note that reason so that 6 months from now we don't wonder why we said
Yeah.
September?
Yeah,
If I'm writing it down, I won't look.
Someplace else too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And add in reference to that.
Yeah, we'll say it's a revenue bonds callable.
Well, 6.1 on, this could be a potential problem too, because I don't know what exercises means. Does that mean at close, or does that mean giving notice? Because if we do, if we have to take this off of the balance sheet, and they get notice and they close in January, the last 3 months we will be in violation of the covenant.
So we have a note, maybe this speaks to where you are, in our documentation for the definitive agreement, that a 6-month notice is necessary. And for every month short of a 6-month notice, that incurs an extra penalty because it needs to build our trust up a little bit more.
Got that, but if
Is that what you're talking
our
about?
bond covenants require us to keep a certain balance, and if
And
I'm
cash,
reading
don't
this
you
right,
too?
if the balance on our books changes before closing, and we actually get the money, then we'd be in violation of the covenant.
But I think we've said above that the purchase involves calling the bonds. The bonds no longer exist. The trust indenture requirements no longer exist. We can check that, but I think we've got a logical flow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Getting
Something
ahead
to
of
check,
you, but,
I think we're all right, but we'll check it.
Is there any conflict between the last sentence of 5? Do not receive any additional funds after providing notice of termination if it terminates the affiliation prior to January 1st. In item 6, it talks about exercise the option to withdraw from the affiliation agreement in December. Is there a time lag there? They could use an option to withdraw in December, but then the termination prior to January 1st.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to.
Yeah,
Needs to be
this
cleaned
is
up.
very,
Maybe
yeah, need to
relook
clean
at
it
that
up.
date.
Yeah, it
Good
does.
point. Thank you.
Need some cleaning.
So it makes a little more sense.
Lots of to be determined.
Not too many. Enough. Okay,
are we going to
We
get
made
to
it
the
to the
rest of
end.
this?
Yes,
Okay.
in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Are we okay? I don't want to walk
Yeah.
away from this.
Yeah,
This
no,
is-
I
this
think
is the work of tonight,
It was
really.
really good work on it.
Okay.
On 6.1, are we making an assumption there, once again, that says the trust fund will remain the power of the district and posted to the balance sheet until the time OMC exercises its option and purchases the facilities and associated land from the district? I don't know, maybe that's okay. Until it exercises its option. What if it does not exercise its option?
Then it doesn't get it.
Then the trust fund will also remain in the property. of the
That's
district.
right.
Either way,
You retain it.
we retain it.
Yeah. So
Okay,
we start all over again.
thanks.
Thank you all. I know you had to do a lot of homework to prep for that. But we'll get all of those questions and comments brought in and then follow up next month. All right, so
Thank you.
going through, so land and building leases, nothing to offer there. That just remains part of our agenda. That time will come. Transfer of equipment leases, that time will come. Certificate of need also, that time will come. We did have an opportunity to have a conversation with the Assistant Attorney General, and I say we, but it really was Skip. Skip was our we. Do you mind, Skip? You can summarize?
No, I don't mind at all.
Okay, because I sent the email to you all.
So there's an antitrust division that's set up within the Attorney General's office. And at one point, anyway, the contacts I had, they said, yeah, there's 2 people. There's now 13 Assistant Attorney Generals in the antitrust division, I found out. And there was a lady's name who I came across in the legislative testimony, and I started just calling these people that were in the antitrust division. Finally got the right person, and we traded phone call messages for probably a good week and a half. Finally connected, and she said, yes, we are aware of the implementation issues. We know it takes effect January 1, 2020. What is your question? I said, well, what do we have to have in place to avoid having the Attorney General's office be involved and review this for us? And she was very, very nice and very pleasant about it. She says, a definitive agreement would work. You do not have to have your certificate of need. And I said, would you be willing to talk to my CEO, Dr. Whitcup? Absolutely. Would you be willing to talk to the CFO? Absolutely. Outside counsel? Yes. So very
willing to put it in writing.
As you're talking on the phone.
I did not ask that, but we will have more conversations with her now that we have the contact point. And they do not have any system built up. They do not know how they're going to review it. They know that you're going to inform them and provide that information, and then they have 30 days to ask for additional questions or information. And they don't even know what that's going to look like. Yeah, I can tell you that their concern is it has been abused in the past, but she was also quite open and honest that said in the past, people have come forward and says, we're doing this, do you have any concerns about antitrust? And so I said, well, we will be transparent about this, we'll work on this. I didn't go into any of the details at this point, but I said,
Details can change.
it's a public hospital district that wants to do it and do it right and make sure the Attorney General's involved. She says we would be more than willing to assist if we could early on.
So we have our contact point,
We
so we'll
have contact
exercise that if
person.
we need to, but we'll wait. I don't want to be perceived as a pester or trying to figure out how to skirt it. We'll just go through it naturally. We're not under the gun. Even if we have to go through a review process, we're waiting for a certificate of need review anyway.
Would you mind sharing the name of that assistant?
Oh, not at all. I sent all the contact
It's in
information.
yeah, I sent it, but I can get it to you.
You send it to us
Yeah, I forwarded it in the email that I sent.
today?
No, earlier. It's okay. I'll get it for you.
So would you mind
can hear
sending
me?
me that
No
again?
problem.
I'm sorry.
No problem. Are you planning on calling?
Pardon?
Are you planning on
Of course
calling?
not. No, but I would just like to know who that is.
Yeah, we do. So just our very last piece, and then we can eat whatever's in the crock pot over there. This was
The
just
timeline.
June, okay, June, July, and now August. So just update. So we are, for due diligence, we are on track right now, but in the notes you see I wrote, it feels like we're on pace to not be. Because we're supposed to have it done by the end of August. And so I think it's going to go into September, so I think it'll be a little late. The definitive agreement as of this moment is on, here's Skip. The definitive agreement out of this moment is not delinquent, it's still on track, but that we don't have one in our hand yet to review, so it feels like it's also on track to be late.
You don't have to
The
write it.
trust agreement is the contract that we just did today, so I think
We're looking
the
good.
parts
Yeah.
of the timeline that we're
in control of, we're doing great. We're doing great. And then the leases and the certificate of needs, no updates there. And the PTO that's happening at Overlake, I don't know if any work has even begun yet because the person that I would ask is on PTO.
Mm-hmm.
Erica Kosher.
When or they needs 13 attorneys?
Well, that kind of concerned me, didn't know.
Do we pay for them?
More money for taxpayers.
Taxes.
There's a lot of antitrust going on, too.
I think they're just making it up.
We are a litigant state.
Yes.
Well, they also do all the pharmaceutical.
It is 6:02. We want to adjourn for some food and re-adjourn at 6:30 for our board meeting.
Downstairs.
Yes, downstairs. So we are adjourned.
How many attorneys?